That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Neil Armstrong's words as he first stepped on the moon in 1969 marked the pinnacle of the space race. But what led to this historic moment? For over 2 decades, the space race drove global scientific advancement, pitting the United States against the Soviet Union in a battle for cosmic supremacy. This wasn't just about reaching the stars. It was a contest of technological might, national prestige, and Cold War dominance that reshaped our world. In this documentary, we'll walk through the critical milestones that shaped humanity's journey to the stars. From the dawn of rocket technology and Operation Paperclip to the historic moon landing and the rise of the private space industry, we'll explore how the competition between superpowers launched us into a new frontier. Before we blast off into this journey through the space race, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more fascinating stories. And in the comments below, let us know which space milestone you think changed history forever. Prelude to the space race, World War II, and rocket technology. The seeds of the space race were sown in the unlikely soil of World War II. As nations battled on Earth, German scientists were pushing the boundaries of rocket technology, creating weapons that would later pave the way to the stars. In the midst of the war, Germany unveiled the V-2 rocket, a marvel of engineering that would change the course of history. This long-range guided ballistic missile was unlike anything the world had seen before. It could soar to the edge of space and deliver its payload with unprecedented speed and accuracy. The V-2 was more than just a weapon. It was a glimpse into the future of space exploration. As the war drew to a close, both the United States and the Soviet Union recognized the immense potential of this technology. They scrambled to secure not just the rockets themselves, but the brilliant minds behind them. This set the stage for a new kind of competition, one that would take humanity beyond the confines of our planet. The United States launched Operation Paperclip, a secret program designed to bring German scientists to America. Among them was Wernher von Braun, the mastermind behind the V-2 rocket. Von Braun and his team found a new home at the U.S. Army's Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. Here, they would continue their work, adapting their knowledge of ballistic missiles to the peaceful exploration of space. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union was not idle. They too acquired German rocket facilities and experts, eager to harness this technology for their own purposes. Under the guidance of Sergei Korolev, the chief designer of the Soviet space program, they began to reverse engineer German rockets. The R-1, a direct copy of the V-2, was just the beginning of their efforts. This competition in rocketry laid the foundation for the Cold War rivalry that would define the space race. Both superpowers recognized that dominance in space could translate to dominance on Earth. The race was on to develop bigger, more powerful rockets capable of carrying satellites and eventually humans into orbit and beyond. By the end of the 1940s, the United States and the Soviet Union were pouring resources into their fledgling space programs. Military applications were still at the forefront, but the potential for scientific exploration was becoming increasingly apparent. Experimental rockets pushed higher and faster, each launch bringing the dream of spaceflight closer to reality. The technology born from the ashes of war was about to usher in a new era of human achievement. The same rockets that once rained destruction would soon carry the hopes and dreams of entire nations into the cosmos. The stage was set for a competition unlike any in human history, one that would push the boundaries of science, technology, and human endurance. The launch of Sputnik, the dawn of the space race. October 4, 1957 started like any other day, but it ended with a small metal sphere changing the course of history. The Soviet Union had just launched Sputnik 1, the world's first artificial satellite, into orbit around Earth. This beeping, basketball-sized object marked the beginning of the space race between the US and USSR, transforming the Cold War into a cosmic competition. Sputnik's successful launch shocked the world, especially the United States. It was a clear demonstration of Soviet technological prowess, catching America off guard. This satellite, weighing just 83 kilograms, circled the Earth every 98 minutes, emitting radio signals that could be picked up by anyone with a receiver. These simple beeps became a powerful symbol of Soviet dominance in space exploration. The impact of Sputnik on the American psyche was profound. It shattered the notion of U.S. technological superiority and raised fears of a significant military gap. If the Soviets could put a satellite into orbit, they could just as easily launch nuclear weapons across continents. This realization sent shockwaves through the American government and public alike. In response, the United States rapidly accelerated its own space and missile programs. The government poured resources into scientific research and education, recognizing the need to catch up in the fields of science and technology. The launch of Sputnik also had a significant impact on American education. There was a renewed focus on science and mathematics in schools, with the government providing funding for these subjects through the National Defense Education Act. The goal was to produce a new generation of scientists and engineers who could help America compete in the space race. As news of Sputnik spread, people around the world looked up at the night sky, trying to catch a glimpse of the artificial moon passing overhead. It captured the public imagination and sparked a new era of scientific curiosity. Suddenly, the idea of space travel moved from the realm of science fiction into potential reality. The space race that followed Sputnik's launch would push both superpowers to achieve incredible feats of engineering and human endurance. It became a central arena for Cold War competition, with each side striving to outdo the other in a series of firsts in space. The race would eventually culminate in the moon landings, but it all started with this small spherical satellite. Sputnik not only demonstrated the potential of space technology, but also heightened global tensions and aspirations. It showed that the cosmos was now within reach, opening up new possibilities for scientific discovery and exploration. At the same time, it underscored the military implications of space technology, adding a new dimension to the ongoing arms race between East and West. Explorer 1. America joins the space game. The Soviets may have won the first round, but America wasn't about to forfeit the space race. Just months after Sputnik's launch, the U.S. was ready to play its hand. What they sent into space would not only match the Soviets, but surpass them in an unexpected way. On January 31, 1958, the United States launched Explorer 1, its first successful satellite, into orbit. This achievement marked America's official entry into the space race, following the Soviet Union's Sputnik triumph. The launch came after intense efforts to catch up with the Soviets and restore national pride. Explorer 1 was developed by a team led by Wernher von Braun, the German scientist who had been brought to America as part of Operation Paperclip. Von Braun and his team worked tirelessly to adapt their rocket technology for space exploration. The satellite was launched aboard a Juno 1 rocket, a modified version of the Army's Redstone ballistic missile. Unlike Sputnik, which primarily served as a proof of concept, Explorer 1 carried scientific instruments. This strategic decision demonstrated America's commitment to not just matching Soviet achievements, but advancing scientific knowledge. The most significant instrument on board was a cosmic ray detector designed to measure radiation levels in Earth's orbit. The mission proved more successful than anyone could have anticipated. As Explorer 1 orbited Earth, it made a groundbreaking discovery. The cosmic ray detector showed unexpected variations in radiation levels, providing the first evidence of what would later be named the Van Allen radiation belts. These belts of charged particles held in place by Earth's magnetic field represented a major scientific breakthrough. This discovery highlighted the importance of space exploration for advancing our understanding of Earth and its environment. It also demonstrated that the space race was about more than just national prestige. It was a catalyst for scientific advancement and innovation. The success of Explorer 1 helped restore some of America's confidence after earlier failures in satellite launches. The previous year had seen embarrassing setbacks, including the infamous Sputnik incident, where a Vanguard rocket exploded on the launch pad. Explorer 1's triumph showed that the U.S. could compete in space and even surpass Soviet achievements in some areas. The launch of Explorer 1 signaled the growing rivalry between the U.S. and USSR in space exploration. Both nations now had functional satellites in orbit, and the race to achieve new milestones was intensifying. This competition would drive rapid advancements in rocket technology, spacecraft design, and our understanding of space over the coming years. As news of Explorer 1's success spread, it captivated the American public. People once again looked to the skies with a sense of wonder and national pride. The achievement also had political implications, helping to bolster support for increased funding and resources for space exploration. The creation of NASA and early challenges. While Explorer 1's triumph restored some American confidence, it also exposed a glaring issue. The U.S. lacked a unified strategy for space exploration. What if there was a way to harness all of America's scientific and technological prowess under one roof? The answer came on October 1, 1958, when President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the National Aeronautics and Space Act, creating NASA. This new agency would bring together existing space research programs, consolidating America's fragmented efforts into a coordinated push for the stars. NASA's birth wasn't just a bureaucratic reshuffling. It represented a fundamental shift in how the United States approached space exploration. The agency was given a broad mandate to lead America's efforts in aeronautical and space activities, encompassing everything from developing advanced aircraft to sending humans beyond Earth's atmosphere. But NASA faced an uphill battle from the start. The Soviet Union had a significant head start in rocketry and satellite technology. Sputnik 1 was already circling the Earth, beeping its message of Soviet technological superiority. The pressure was on for NASA to catch up and surpass its Cold War rival. One of NASA's first challenges was to overcome the public's shaken confidence in American space capabilities. The memory of failed launches, like the infamous Vanguard TV-3 explosion, was still fresh in people's minds. This rocket, intended to carry America's first satellite into orbit, had instead become a fiery spectacle of failure on the launch pad. NASA needed to prove it could succeed where previous efforts had faltered. Despite these setbacks, NASA wasn't starting from scratch. The agency inherited several promising projects from its predecessor organizations. The Explorer satellite program, which had already put America's first satellite into orbit, now fell under NASA's purview. The X-15 rocket plane, a cutting-edge aircraft designed to explore the boundaries between Earth's atmosphere and space, also became part of NASA's portfolio. These existing projects provided a foundation for NASA's future missions, but the agency knew it needed to push even further to compete with the Soviets. This meant not only developing more advanced rockets and spacecraft, but also fostering collaboration across various sectors. NASA quickly began working with scientists from universities and research institutions, tapping into the country's brightest minds. The agency also maintained close ties with the military, leveraging their expertise in rocketry and aviation. Private industry played a crucial role too, with companies like Boeing and Lockheed Martin becoming key partners in spacecraft development. This collaborative approach allowed NASA to make rapid progress in its early years. Within months of its creation, the agency was already planning ambitious missions that would push the boundaries of human knowledge and capability in space. Laika, the first animal in orbit. As NASA was taking shape, the Soviet Union was preparing for another groundbreaking mission. This time, their pioneer wasn't human. A small, furry cosmonaut was about to make history and change the course of space exploration forever. On November 3, 1957, just a month after the launch of Sputnik 1, the Soviet Union sent Sputnik 2 into orbit. This new satellite carried a special messenger, Laika, a stray dog from the streets of Moscow. Laika became the first living creature to orbit Earth, marking a significant milestone in the space race. Laika wasn't chosen at random. Soviet scientists carefully selected her for her calm temperament and resilience. As a stray, she had already proven her ability to withstand harsh conditions, making her an ideal candidate for the unknowns of space travel. The Soviets believed that if a dog could survive in orbit, it would pave the way for human spaceflight. The mission's primary goal was to study the effects of spaceflight on a living organism. Scientists wanted to understand how the stress of launch, microgravity, and other space conditions would impact a biological system. This information was crucial for the eventual human missions that both the Soviets and Americans were planning. Laika's spacecraft, Sputnik 2, was a technological marvel for its time. It was much larger than its predecessor, weighing 508.3 kilograms and equipped with a life support system for its canine passenger. This system included an oxygen generator, fans to circulate air, and devices to remove carbon dioxide and regulate temperature. However, the mission had a dark side that sparked ethical debates worldwide. Sputnik 2 was not designed for Laika's safe return to Earth. From the beginning, Soviet scientists knew that Laika would not survive the mission. This fact was not immediately disclosed to the public, leading to controversy when it later came to light. Despite these ethical concerns, Sputnik 2's mission provided invaluable data. It demonstrated that a living organism could survive being launched into orbit and function in space. The information gathered about life support systems, the biological effects of spaceflight, and the challenges of keeping a living creature alive in orbit would prove crucial for future missions. Laika's journey lasted several days, much longer than initially planned. While the exact details of her fate remained unclear for years, it's now known that she likely survived only a few hours in orbit due to heat and stress. The satellite continued to orbit Earth for 5 months before burning up on re-entry into the atmosphere in April 1958. The success of Sputnik 2 reinforced the Soviet Union's dominance in the early stages of space exploration. It demonstrated their ability to not only launch satellites, but also to support life in space, even if only for a short time. This achievement put increased pressure on the United States to catch up in the space race. Vostok 1. Yuri Gagarin becomes the first human in space. From stray dogs to human pioneers, the next leap in space exploration was monumental. What would it take to send the first person beyond Earth's atmosphere, and who would be brave enough to attempt it? On April 12, 1961, the world held its breath as the Soviet Union launched Vostok 1, carrying 27-year-old cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin into the unknown. As the rocket thundered skyward, Gagarin reportedly shouted, "Poyakali," or "Let's go," marking the beginning of human spaceflight. The mission lasted just 108 minutes, but in that short time, Gagarin accomplished what had once seemed impossible. He completed a single orbit around Earth, reaching speeds of 27,400 kilometers per hour and an altitude of 327 kilometers. As he soared high above the planet, Gagarin became the first human to witness the breathtaking sight of Earth from space, describing it as beautiful in his mission log. The Vostok 1 spacecraft was a technological marvel for its time. Designed to be fully automated, it relied on onboard computers to control every aspect of the flight. This decision was made to ensure Gagarin's safety in the untested environment of space. The cosmonaut's role was primarily that of a passenger and observer, though he could take manual control in case of an emergency. Gagarin's selection for this historic mission was no accident. Chosen from a group of 20 cosmonauts, he stood out for his exceptional piloting skills, physical fitness, and unwavering calm under pressure. His humble background as the son of a carpenter and his easygoing personality made him a perfect symbol of Soviet achievement. As Vostok 1 began its descent, Gagarin faced one final challenge. At an altitude of 7 kilometers, he ejected from the spacecraft and parachuted to Earth, landing in a field near the Volga River. A local farmer and her daughter were the first to greet the bewildered cosmonaut, who quickly assured them, quote, "Don't be afraid, I am a Soviet citizen like you. I have descended from space and I must find a telephone to call Moscow." News of Gagarin's successful flight spread rapidly, sending shockwaves around the world. In the Soviet Union, celebrations erupted as people took to the streets, hailing their new hero. Gagarin was quickly whisked away to Moscow, where he was greeted by cheering crowds and a triumphant Nikita Khrushchev. The impact of Vostok 1's success on the space race was profound. It marked a major victory for the Soviet Union, pushing them further ahead of the United States in the quest for space supremacy. The mission showcased Soviet advancements in spacecraft design and human spaceflight capabilities, leaving the Americans scrambling to catch up. In response to this achievement, the United States intensified its own efforts to send an astronaut into space. Less than a month later, on May 5, 1961, Alan Shepard became the first American in space aboard Freedom 7. However, Shepard's flight was suborbital, lasting only 15 minutes and reaching an altitude of 187 kilometers. Impressive, but still short of Gagarin's orbital flight. Yuri Gagarin's journey remains one of the most celebrated milestones in the history of space exploration. His courage and the technological feat of Vostok 1 opened the door for future missions, inspiring generations of astronauts and cosmonauts. Gagarin's famous words upon his return to Earth, "I saw how beautiful our planet is. People, let us preserve and increase this beauty, not destroy it," continue to resonate, reminding us of the fragility and wonder of our home in the cosmos. Project Mercury. America sends its first astronauts. As Gagarin's historic flight captivated the world, the United States was racing to catch up. Project Mercury, America's first human spaceflight program, began in 1958 under the newly formed NASA. Its goal was clear: send an astronaut into orbit and bring them back safely, proving the U.S. could compete with Soviet advancements in space. The program faced significant challenges from the start. Developing reliable rockets capable of carrying humans to space was no small feat. Engineers worked tirelessly to adapt existing missile technology for space travel, a process fraught with setbacks and failures. At the same time, scientists grappled with creating life support systems that could keep astronauts alive in the harsh environment of space. Despite these hurdles, Project Mercury pressed forward. On May 5, 1961, Alan Shepard became the first American in space. Aboard the Freedom 7 spacecraft, Shepard completed a suborbital flight lasting 15 minutes. Though brief, this mission was a crucial step forward for the U.S. space program. Shepard's successful return demonstrated that humans could survive the rigors of spaceflight, paving the way for more ambitious missions. The next big milestone came on February 20, 1962, when John Glenn made history as the first American to orbit Earth. Glenn's Friendship 7 mission lasted nearly 5 hours, during which he circled the planet 3 times. This achievement brought the United States closer to parity with the Soviet Union in the space race. Glenn's orbit of Earth captivated the American public, transforming him into a national hero overnight. The Mercury astronauts themselves were a crucial part of the program's success. NASA carefully selected these men from a pool of military test pilots, choosing individuals who could handle the physical and mental demands of spaceflight. Known as the Mercury 7, these astronauts became symbols of American determination and ingenuity. Their bravery in the face of the unknown inspired a generation and helped rally public support for the space program. As Project Mercury progressed, each mission pushed the boundaries of what was possible. The program gradually extended flight durations, culminating in Gordon Cooper's Faith 7 mission in May 1963. Cooper orbited Earth 22 times over 34 hours, demonstrating that humans could function effectively in space for extended periods. While the Soviet Union maintained its lead in many aspects of the space race, Project Mercury showcased America's growing capabilities in spaceflight. Each successful mission built confidence and expertise, laying the groundwork for more ambitious endeavors. The program's achievements were not just about national pride. They represented significant advancements in science and technology that would benefit society in countless ways. Project Mercury concluded in 1963, having achieved its primary objectives. It had sent 6 astronauts into space, including 2 orbital flights, and returned them safely to Earth. Perhaps most importantly, it had proven that human spaceflight was not only possible, but could be done reliably and repeatedly. The race for long-duration spaceflight, Vostok versus Mercury. While Project Mercury proved human spaceflight was possible, a new challenge emerged. How long could humans survive in the unforgiving vacuum of space? The answer would shape the future of space exploration and push both superpowers to their limits. The competition between the Soviet Union's Vostok program and the US's Mercury program soon extended beyond simply reaching orbit. Both nations now set their sights on achieving longer-duration spaceflights, each eager to demonstrate their technological prowess and the endurance of their astronauts. The Soviets once again took the lead in this new phase of the space race. On August 6, 1961, cosmonaut German Titov embarked on a mission that would redefine what was possible in space. Aboard Vostok 2, Titov orbited the Earth for 25 hours and 18 minutes, completing 17 full orbits of our planet. This flight was a quantum leap forward from Yuri Gagarin's single orbit just a few months earlier. Titov's mission was more than just an exercise in endurance. It provided valuable data on how the human body reacts to extended periods in microgravity. During his flight, Titov became the first person to sleep in space, eat in space, and, unfortunately, experience space sickness. These experiences, while uncomfortable for Titov, provided crucial information for future long-duration missions. The success of Vostok 2 sent shockwaves through NASA. The United States was once again playing catch-up, and the pressure was on to extend the duration of their Mercury flights. John Glenn's historic orbital mission aboard Friendship 7 on February 20, 1962, lasted nearly 5 hours, a significant achievement, but still far short of Titov's day-long flight. NASA pushed forward, each Mercury mission aiming to last longer than the last. Scott Carpenter's Aurora 7 flight in May 1962 matched Glenn's 3 orbits. Then, in October 1962, Wally Schirra piloted Sigma 7 for 6 orbits, staying in space for just over 9 hours. These incremental increases were building towards something bigger. The culmination of Project Mercury's efforts came with Gordon Cooper's Faith 7 mission in May 1963. Cooper orbited the Earth 22 times over the course of 34 hours and 19 minutes. This flight finally brought the Americans close to the endurance record set by Titov, demonstrating that U.S. astronauts and technology were capable of long-duration spaceflight. However, the Soviets weren't standing still. Between Titov and Cooper's flights, they launched 3 more Vostok missions, each pushing the boundaries further. Vostok 3 and Vostok 4, launched just a day apart in August 1962, achieved the first group flight in space. Cosmonaut Andriy Nikolaev aboard Vostok 3 set a new endurance record of nearly 4 days in space. The final Vostok mission, Vostok 6 in June 1963, made history by carrying Valentina Tereshkova, the first woman in space. Tereshkova's flight lasted almost 3 days, further cementing Soviet dominance in long-duration spaceflight. These extended missions were more than just a contest of endurance. They provided vital data on how the human body and mind cope with prolonged exposure to the space environment. Engineers learned valuable lessons about life support systems, while doctors gained insights into the physiological and psychological effects of spaceflight. Apollo versus Soyuz, differing visions for manned spaceflight. While the race for longer missions was heating up, a new question emerged. What was the ultimate goal of human spaceflight? The answer revealed a stark contrast in vision between the two superpowers, setting the stage for the most ambitious phase of the space race yet. The United States and the Soviet Union took very different approaches with their Apollo and Soyuz programs. Apollo aimed for a spectacular achievement, landing humans on the moon and bringing them back safely. This goal captured the world's imagination and showcased America's technological might. The Soyuz program, on the other hand, focused on creating reliable spacecraft for long-term missions in Earth orbit and beyond. Apollo was all about pushing boundaries and achieving the seemingly impossible. NASA poured massive resources into developing the Saturn V rocket, the most powerful ever built. This behemoth could lift the Apollo spacecraft and lunar module into space, sending astronauts on their journey to the moon. The program moved at a breakneck pace, with each mission building on the last, all leading up to the ultimate goal. On July 20, 1969, Apollo reached its pinnacle. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to walk on the lunar surface, fulfilling President Kennedy's promise and captivating millions around the globe. This moment of triumph represented the culmination of years of effort, innovation, and sacrifice. The Soviet Soyuz program took a different path. Instead of aiming for a single spectacular achievement, they focused on creating a versatile and reliable spacecraft. Soyuz was designed for sustainability, with the ability to be reused and adapted for various missions. This approach proved valuable in the long run, as Soyuz became the backbone of Soviet and later Russian space efforts. These different strategies reflected the ideological differences between the superpowers. The United States sought to demonstrate its technological superiority through a grand, attention-grabbing feat. The Soviet Union, meanwhile, prioritized a steady, long-term presence in space, emphasizing practical applications and scientific research. Apollo missions pushed the boundaries of technology, developing innovations that would find uses far beyond space exploration. However, the program was limited in scope, focusing primarily on lunar missions. Once the goal of landing on the moon was achieved, public interest and funding began to wane. Soyuz, with its emphasis on reliability and adaptability, proved to be a more sustainable approach in the long term. The spacecraft evolved over time, supporting various missions from Earth orbit to space station servicing. Its design allowed for incremental improvements, making it a cost-effective option for continued space exploration. Despite the competition between Apollo and Soyuz, these programs laid the groundwork for future cooperation in space. As the space race cooled, both nations began to see the benefits of working together. This shift in attitude culminated in the Apollo-Soyuz test project in 1975, where an Apollo spacecraft docked with a Soyuz in orbit. This historic mission symbolized a new era of international cooperation in space exploration. The Cuban Missile Crisis and its space implications. From peaceful exploration to potential warfare, space technology suddenly found itself at the center of global conflict. How did 13 tense days in October 1962 reshape the entire trajectory of the space race? The Cuban Missile Crisis forced both the United States and USSR to confront the true power of their cosmic pursuits. The Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962 brought the world to the brink of nuclear war and had profound implications for the space race. As tensions between the United States and Soviet Union reached a boiling point, both nations suddenly recognized the strategic importance of their space technologies in a new light. What was once seen as a quest for scientific knowledge and national prestige now took on a more militaristic tone. During the crisis, satellites played a crucial role in monitoring military activities. The U.S. used its Corona spy satellites to gather intelligence on Soviet missile deployments in Cuba, showcasing how space had become a critical tool for reconnaissance. This demonstrated the dual nature of space technology. The same rockets that could launch scientific payloads could also deliver nuclear warheads. As the crisis unfolded, space programs became powerful symbols of national strength and technological superiority. The ability to launch satellites and potentially weaponize space became a key factor in the balance of power between the two superpowers. The crisis highlighted how advancements in space technology could directly impact national security and geopolitical strategies. In the aftermath of the Cuban Missile Crisis, both the United States and the Soviet Union increased funding for their space initiatives. They saw these programs as essential for maintaining geopolitical dominance and ensuring national security. This led to rapid advancements in space capabilities, including the development of more reliable launch systems and improved satellite communication networks. The crisis also indirectly spurred innovation in space technology. For example, the need for better communication during tense international situations led to increased investment in satellite communication systems. These advancements would later find civilian applications, revolutionizing global telecommunications. Perhaps most importantly, the Cuban Missile Crisis underscored the necessity of space diplomacy. Both nations realized that unchecked competition in space could lead to dangerous confrontations. This paved the way for future agreements like the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, which established principles for the peaceful use of outer space. The space race, which had begun as a competition for scientific and technological prestige, now took on new dimensions. It became intertwined with nuclear deterrence strategies and global security concerns. The ability to monitor adversaries from space and potentially control this new frontier became as important as reaching new cosmic milestones. The Moon as the goal. Kennedy's bold declaration. In the aftermath of the Cuban Missile Crisis, America faced a crucial moment in the space race. The Soviet Union had taken an early lead with Sputnik and Yuri Gagarin's historic flight. The United States needed a bold move to reassert its technological prowess and capture the world's imagination. On May 25, 1961, President John F. Kennedy stood before Congress and made a declaration that would change the course of history. He announced a daring goal: to land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth before the end of the decade. This wasn't just a scientific objective, it was a statement of national will and a challenge to the American spirit. Kennedy's choice of the moon as the ultimate destination was no accident. It represented the pinnacle of human exploration, a feat so audacious that it would leave no doubt about America's capabilities. The moon became a symbol of hope and progress, a beacon in the sky that represented the best of human ingenuity and courage. The president's speech ignited a fire in the American public. Suddenly, space exploration wasn't just a distant dream, it was a national mission. Kennedy's words transformed the space race from a competition between rival nations into a quest for knowledge and achievement that could benefit all of humanity. NASA, still a young agency, found itself thrust into the spotlight. The Apollo program, which would eventually fulfill Kennedy's vision, began to take shape. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock to develop the technologies needed for lunar missions. The Saturn V rocket, a marvel of engineering, became the workhorse of the Apollo program. Standing over 360 feet tall, it was the most powerful rocket ever built, capable of lifting the Apollo spacecraft and lunar module into orbit. As NASA's efforts accelerated, so did the pace of innovation. New materials were developed to withstand the extreme conditions of space travel. Computer systems, still in their infancy, were pushed to their limits to handle the complex calculations needed for lunar trajectories. Life support systems were designed to keep astronauts alive in the harsh vacuum of space. Astronaut training programs became more rigorous than ever before. The men chosen for these missions underwent grueling physical and mental preparation. They spent countless hours in simulators, practiced lunar landings in specifically designed aircraft, and studied geology to prepare for their explorations on the moon's surface. Though President Kennedy didn't live to see his vision realized, his words set in motion a chain of events that would culminate in one of humanity's greatest achievements. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong took that historic first step onto the lunar surface, fulfilling Kennedy's promise and captivating the world. Gemini missions. Testing the limits for moon landing. While the world dreamed of moonwalks, NASA knew that getting there would require mastering a set of crucial skills. The answer lay in a series of missions that would test the limits of human endurance and technological innovation. The Gemini program, launched in 1961, was designed to bridge the gap between the early Mercury flights and the ambitious Apollo missions. Its primary goal was to develop and perfect the techniques needed for a successful lunar landing. This meant pushing the boundaries of what was possible in space, from long-duration flights to complex maneuvers. One of the most critical skills Gemini set out to master was extravehicular activity, or spacewalking. On June 3, 1965, astronaut Ed White stepped out of a Gemini 4 and into the void of space. For 23 minutes, White floated at the end of a tether, maneuvering with a handheld gas gun. This historic moment proved that humans could work outside their spacecraft, a crucial ability for future moon missions. Rendezvous and docking were other essential techniques that Gemini needed to perfect. These maneuvers would be vital for the complex dance of spacecraft required to land on the Moon and return safely to Earth. Gemini 6A and Gemini 7 demonstrated these capabilities in December 1965. The two spacecraft rendezvoused in orbit, coming within just 1 foot of each other. This precision flying showed that the intricate ballet of lunar missions was possible. Gemini 8, commanded by Neil Armstrong, took the next step. On March 16, 1966, it achieved the first docking between two spacecraft in orbit. However, this mission also demonstrated the dangers of space exploration. Shortly after docking, a stuck thruster sent the combined spacecraft into a dangerous spin. Armstrong's cool head and piloting skills saved the day, safely bringing the mission to an early but successful conclusion. Long-duration spaceflight was another critical area of study for Gemini. The moon missions would require astronauts to spend days in space, far longer than the Mercury flights. Gemini 7 pushed this limit, with Frank Borman and Jim Lovell spending nearly 14 days in orbit. This extended mission tested not only the spacecraft's light support systems, but also the astronauts' physical and mental endurance in the confines of their tiny capsule. Throughout the Gemini program, NASA continually refined its spacecraft and procedures. Each mission built on the lessons of the last, gradually increasing complexity and duration. By the time Gemini 12 splashed down in November 1966, the program had achieved all of its major objectives. As the Gemini program came to a close, the dream of walking on the moon no longer seemed like science fiction. The skills and technologies developed during these missions had turned that dream into a tangible goal. With Gemini's success, NASA was ready to take the next giant leap towards fulfilling President Kennedy's bold vision. Voskhod missions, first multi-crew flights, and spacewalks. As NASA was pushing the boundaries with Gemini, the Soviet Union was preparing to leapfrog ahead once more. Their next move would involve a dangerous gamble, sending multiple cosmonauts into space without spacesuits. This bold strategy would set the stage for a series of historic firsts that would once again shock the world. The Soviet Union's Voskhod program marked significant milestones in human spaceflight during the mid-1960s. Unlike the single-seat Vostok capsules, Voskhod was designed to carry multiple crew members. This presented a unique challenge: how to fit more than one person into a spacecraft originally built for a solo cosmonaut. The solution was as innovative as it was risky. Engineers removed the ejection seats from the Vostok design, allowing room for up to 3 cosmonauts. But this modification came at a cost. Without ejection seats, the crew had to wear light clothing instead of bulky spacesuits. This decision prioritized space over safety, reflecting the intense pressure to outpace American achievements in the space race. On October 12, 1964, Voskhod 1 blasted off carrying 3 cosmonauts: Vladimir Komarov, Konstantin Feoktistov, and Boris Yegorov. This marked the first time a multi-person crew had flown in space. The mission was a success, with the trio spending just over 24 hours in orbit before returning safely to Earth. But the Soviets weren't content with this achievement alone. They set their sights on another spectacular first: the first human spacewalk. Voskhod 2, launched on March 18, 1965, would attempt this daring feat. Cosmonaut Alexei Leonov stepped out of the Voskhod 2 spacecraft and into the void of space. For 12 minutes, Leonov floated at the end of a tether, becoming the first person to experience the vastness of space outside the confines of a spacecraft. This historic moment proved that humans could work in the vacuum of space, a crucial ability for future exploration. However, Leonov's spacewalk wasn't without its challenges. His spacesuit, designed for the vacuum of space, began to balloon due to the pressure difference. This made it difficult for Leonov to move and, more critically, to re-enter the airlock. He was forced to partially depressurize his suit, risking decompression sickness, to squeeze back into the spacecraft. The Voskhod program, while achieving significant firsts, was not without its risks. The rush to outpace U.S. achievements led to compromises in safety and design. The lack of ejection seats and the use of light clothing instead of spacesuits left the cosmonauts vulnerable in case of emergencies. Despite these risks, the Voskhod missions were considered a success. They demonstrated the Soviet Union's continued dominance in space exploration and pushed the boundaries of what was possible in human spaceflight. The program ended after just 2 flights, but its accomplishments laid the groundwork for future Soviet advancements in space exploration. The lessons learned from Voskhod, particularly from Leonov's spacewalk, would prove invaluable in the development of future spacecraft and spacewalking techniques. Apollo 1 and Soyuz 1 tragedies. The triumph of early space missions often overshadow a grim truth. Space exploration comes at a steep price. As both superpowers raced toward the moon, they were about to face catastrophic losses that would force them to confront the true cost of their ambitions. On January 27, 1967, a routine pre-flight test for Apollo 1 turned into a nightmare. Inside the command module, astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger B. Chaffee were running through their checklist when disaster struck. A spark ignited in the pure oxygen environment of the capsule, and within seconds, the interior was engulfed in flames. The crew, trapped by a hatch that opens inward, had no chance of escape. In a matter of moments, 3 of America's finest astronauts were gone. The Apollo 1 fire exposed critical flaws in the spacecraft's design. The highly flammable materials used in the cabin, combined with the pure oxygen atmosphere, created a tinderbox waiting to ignite. The inward opening hatch, designed to prevent accidental opening in space, became a death trap on the ground. NASA's investigation revealed a host of other issues, from faulty wiring to inadequate emergency procedures. In the wake of this tragedy, NASA hit the pause button on the Apollo program. Engineers went back to the drawing board, redesigning almost every aspect of the spacecraft with safety as the top priority. The pure oxygen environment was replaced with a nitrogen-oxygen mix. Flammable materials were swapped out for fire-resistant alternatives. The hatch was redesigned to open outward for quick escape. These changes, born from the sacrifice of Grissom, White, and Chaffee, would save lives in future missions. Just 3 months after the Apollo 1 fire, the Soviet Union faced its own space tragedy. On April 23, 1967, cosmonaut Vladimir Komarov blasted off aboard Soyuz 1. From the start, the mission was plagued with problems. The spacecraft's solar panels failed to deploy fully, leaving Komarov with limited power. The attitude control system malfunctioned, sending the craft into wild spins. After just 1 day in orbit, ground controllers made the decision to bring Komarov home. The descent turned into a nightmare. The main parachute failed to deploy properly, leaving the Soyuz capsule plummeting towards Earth at terrifying speed. Komarov, fully aware of his fate, radioed his final goodbyes to his wife and fellow cosmonauts. The capsule slammed into the ground at over 640 kilometers per hour, instantly killing the brave cosmonaut. The Soyuz 1 disaster highlighted the dangers of rushing space missions for political gain. Engineers had warned of numerous issues with the spacecraft, but pressure from the Soviet leadership to launch before an important anniversary pushed the mission forward. Komarov himself knew the risks, but chose to fly, believing that if he refused, his backup, Yuri Gagarin, would be sent in his place. The first human rendezvous in space, Gemini 6 and 7. Imagine flying at 17,000 miles per hour and trying to park next to another vehicle moving just as fast. Now, imagine doing it in the darkness of space, where a mistake could mean instant death. This was the audacious goal of Gemini 6 and 7, a mission that would redefine what was possible in space exploration. The story begins on December 4th, 1965, when Gemini 7 blasted off from Cape Kennedy. Astronauts Frank Borman and Jim Lovell settled in for what would be the longest space mission to date, a grueling 14-day endurance test. Their cramped quarters, about the size of the front seat of a Volkswagen Beetle, would be home for the next 2 weeks as they orbited Earth. But Gemini 7 wasn't just about setting endurance records. It was part of an ambitious plan to achieve the first rendezvous between two spacecraft in orbit. This maneuver was crucial for future lunar missions, where spacecraft would need to link up in the vastness of space. Enter Gemini 6. Originally scheduled to launch on December 12th, the mission faced a major setback when its Agena target vehicle exploded shortly after liftoff. NASA quickly devised a new plan. Gemini 6 would rendezvous with Gemini 7, already in orbit. After overcoming technical delays, Gemini 6A, renamed after the initial launch attempt, finally lifted off on December 15th. Commanded by Wally Schirra and piloted by Tom Stafford, the spacecraft began its chase of Gemini 7 through the silent void of space. What followed was a cosmic dance of unprecedented precision. Using only rudimentary computer systems and their own piloting skills, Schirra and Stafford guided their craft towards Gemini 7. After hours of careful maneuvering, the two spacecraft finally came within visual range of each other. The moment of rendezvous was nothing short of historic. The two Gemini capsules, each traveling at over 17,000 miles per hour, were now flying in formation just a few feet apart. Borman and Lovell, peering out of Gemini 7's windows, could clearly see the faces of their fellow astronauts in Gemini 6A. This achievement was more than just a spectacular feat of flying. It demonstrated that spacecraft could indeed find each other and maneuver precisely in the vastness of space. This capability was essential for the complex lunar missions to come, where the command module and lunar lander would need to separate and reconnect in lunar orbit. Meanwhile, Gemini 7 continued its marathon mission. Borman and Lovell faced the challenges of long-duration spaceflight, dealing with the physical discomfort of weightlessness, limited hygiene facilities, and the psychological strain of confinement. Their experiences provided crucial data on how the human body and mind cope with extended time in space. After nearly 14 days in orbit, Gemini 7 splashed down in the Atlantic Ocean on December 18th. Gemini 6A had returned to Earth 3 days earlier, having completed its rendezvous mission. Together, these missions marked a major step forward in NASA's journey to the Moon. The Soviet Moon Program: Challenges and Failures. As the United States raced towards the Moon, the Soviet Union was not sitting idle. Their lunar program aimed to match and even surpass NASA's Apollo missions, with the ultimate goal of landing cosmonauts on the lunar surface. The Soviets had already achieved impressive feats in space, including the first satellite, first human in orbit, and first spacewalk. Their Luna series of robotic missions successfully reached the Moon, returning valuable data and even bringing back lunar samples. These early successes showcase the Soviet Union's capability to explore our celestial neighbor. However, the Soviet lunar program faced significant challenges that would ultimately derail their efforts to put a cosmonaut on the Moon. One of the biggest obstacles was a lack of unified leadership and direction. Unlike NASA's centralized structure, the Soviet space program was divided between competing design bureaus. Two prominent figures, Sergei Korolev and Vladimir Chelomey, led rival teams with different approaches to reaching the Moon. This internal competition led to a fragmentation of resources and efforts, hindering overall progress. The development of the N-1 rocket, the Soviet equivalent of NASA's Saturn V, became a prime example of the program's struggles. Intended to be the workhorse of the Soviet lunar missions, the N-1 was plagued by technical failures and chronic underfunding. Between 1969 and 1972, the massive rocket was launched 4 times. Each attempt ended in failure, with none of the rockets even reaching orbit. These setbacks were devastating blows to the Soviet lunar ambitions, as a reliable heavy-lift vehicle was essential for any moon landing attempt. The sudden death of Sergei Korolev in 1966 dealt another severe blow to the Soviet lunar program. Korolev, often referred to as the chief designer, was the visionary leader behind many of the Soviet Union's early space successes. His expertise and ability to navigate the complex Soviet bureaucracy were crucial to the program's progress. Without Korolev's leadership, the lunar effort lost much of its momentum and direction. Political and financial pressures also played a significant role in the program's downfall. As the space race heated up, the Soviet government pushed for quick results, often at the expense of thorough testing and development. This rush led to cut corners and increased risks, contributing to the N-1's failures. Additionally, the enormous cost of the lunar program began to strain the Soviet economy, leading to questions about its value and priority. The success of NASA's Apollo-11 mission in July 1969 marked a turning point for the Soviet lunar program. With the United States achieving the first moon landing, much of the political motivation for the Soviet effort evaporated. The focus began to shift toward other space endeavors, such as orbital stations, which were seen as more practical and achievable goals. Despite these setbacks, the Soviet Union continued to achieve significant milestones in lunar exploration. Their robotic missions, including Luna 16, 20, and 24, successfully returned samples from the Moon's surface. These missions provided valuable scientific data and demonstrated Soviet technological capabilities, even as their manned lunar ambitions faded. Apollo 8, first manned mission to orbit the Moon. While the Soviet Union grappled with their lunar program's setbacks, the United States was preparing for a mission that would forever change our perspective of Earth. On December 21, 1968, Apollo 8 blasted off from Cape Kennedy, carrying astronauts Frank Borman, James Lovell, and William Anders on a journey that would take them further from home than any human had ever been before. Apollo 8's primary goal was to test the Saturn V rocket and evaluate systems for future lunar landings. But this mission was about more than just technical objectives. It was a bold statement of American technological prowess and a crucial step towards fulfilling President Kennedy's vision of landing a man on the moon. As Apollo 8 left Earth's orbit and began its journey to the moon, the astronauts experienced something no human had ever felt before: the sensation of being pulled by the gravity of another celestial body. The spacecraft's speed increased as it fell towards the moon, a testament to the precise calculations and engineering that made this mission possible. After a 3-day journey through the void of space, Apollo 8 arrived at its destination. The spacecraft fired its engines to slow down and enter lunar orbit. As they passed around the far side of the moon, the astronauts became the first humans to lose direct contact with Earth, their radio signals blocked by the lunar surface. Over the next 20 hours, Apollo 8 completed 10 orbits around the moon. The crew provided detailed descriptions of the lunar surface, noting its stark beauty and desolate appearance. They searched for potential landing sites for future missions, gathering crucial data that would pave the way for Apollo 11's historic touchdown. But perhaps the most profound moment of the mission came when the astronauts turned their camera back towards Earth. The image they captured, known as Earthrise, showed our planet rising above the lunar horizon, a small blue marble suspended in the blackness of space. This photograph would become one of the most iconic images of the 20th century, offering a new perspective on our place in the cosmos. On Christmas Eve, as millions of people around the world tuned in, the Apollo 8 crew made a live television broadcast from lunar orbit. In a moment that resonated across cultures and beliefs, the astronauts read the first 10 verses from the book of Genesis. Borman closed the broadcast with a message of hope. Good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good Earth. Apollo 8's success demonstrated the feasibility of navigating to the moon and back, a crucial step towards achieving a lunar landing. It proved that the Saturn V rocket could deliver astronauts to lunar orbit and that the spacecraft's systems could function in deep space. The mission also provided valuable experience in the complex maneuvers required for lunar orbit insertion and trans-Earth injection. Apollo 8 paved the way for the missions that would follow, including the historic Apollo 11 moon landing just 7 months later. It pushed the boundaries of human exploration and gave us a new perspective on our home planet. The success of Apollo 8 stands as a testament to human ingenuity, courage, and our unending desire to explore the unknown. The Apollo 11 moon landing, one giant leap for mankind. The stage was set for humanity's greatest adventure. On July 20th, 1969, Apollo 11 prepared to land on the moon, fulfilling President Kennedy's bold vision from 8 years earlier. The eyes of the world turned skyward as 3 brave astronauts embarked on a journey that would redefine our place in the cosmos. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins rode atop the massive Saturn V rocket as it thundered into the Florida sky. The Saturn V, a marvel of engineering, stood taller than a 36-story building and generated enough thrust to lift 130 tons into Earth orbit. This incredible machine was the result of years of research, development, and the dedication of thousands of scientists and engineers. As Apollo 11 approached the moon, Armstrong and Aldrin boarded the lunar module Eagle, leaving Collins to orbit in the command module. The descent to the lunar surface was fraught with tension. Alarms blared in the cockpit as the computer became overloaded with data. Armstrong took manual control, skillfully guiding Eagle past boulder fields to find a safe landing spot. With fuel running low, Armstrong's voice crackled through millions of radios and televisions back on Earth. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Humanity collectively held its breath as Armstrong descended the ladder of the lunar module. As his boot touched the powdery lunar surface, he uttered the immortal words, quote, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Aldrin joined Armstrong on the surface, and together they spent over 2 hours exploring this alien world. They collected rock samples, planted the American flag, and set up scientific experiments. The lunar soil, fine as powder but sharp as glass, clung to their suits as they bounded across the surface in the low gravity. Back on Earth, an estimated 600 million people watched the moonwalk on television. Families gathered around their sets, offices came to a standstill, and even New York's Times Square fell silent as humanity witnessed this historic moment together. The moon landing transcended national boundaries, becoming a shared experience for people around the globe. The Apollo 11 mission showcased the incredible technological achievements of the space race. The precision required to navigate 250,000 miles, land on another world, and return safely to Earth pushed the limits of 1960s technology. The computers on board Apollo 11, though primitive by today's standards, were cutting edge for their time and paved the way for future advancements in computing. As Armstrong and Aldrin explored the lunar surface, they left behind more than footprints. A plaque attached to the lunar module's leg read, "Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. We came in peace for all mankind." This sentiment captured the mission's significance, not just as an American achievement, but as a milestone for all of humanity. As the astronauts returned safely to Earth, splashing down in the Pacific Ocean on July 24th, they brought with them not only moon rocks and scientific data, but a new perspective on our planet. The sight of Earth from space, a small blue marble in the vastness of space, underscored the fragility and unity of our world. Post-moon landing, Skylab and Salyut stations. This new perspective of Earth from space would soon be shared by more astronauts than ever before. But how long could humans actually survive in the harsh environment of space? The race was on to push the boundaries of long-duration spaceflight. After the triumph of the moon landings, both the United States and the Soviet Union shifted their focus to establishing a long-term human presence in space. This new phase of the space race led to the development of the first space stations, marking a significant leap forward in our ability to live and work beyond Earth's atmosphere. In 1971, the Soviet Union took the lead by launching Salyut 1, the world's first space station. This breakthrough opened up new possibilities for extended stays in orbit. The Salyut program continued with multiple stations, each one improving on the last. These orbital outposts allowed cosmonauts to spend months in space, conducting scientific experiments and pushing the lengths of human endurance in microgravity. The Salyut missions weren't without their challenges. In 1971, the crew of Soyuz 11 tragically perished during their return to Earth after a successful 23-day stay on Salyut 1. Despite this setback, the Soviet Union pressed on, refining their technology and procedures with each subsequent mission. Not to be outdone, the United States launched its first space station, Skylab, in 1973. This orbital workshop was larger and more sophisticated than its Soviet counterparts. Skylab hosted 3 crews over its lifetime, with astronauts staying aboard for up to 84 days at a time. Life aboard these early space stations was a far cry from the comfort of Earth. Astronauts and cosmonauts had to adapt to the challenges of microgravity, from eating and sleeping to conducting complex scientific experiments. They studied the effects of long-duration spaceflight on the human body, gathering crucial data that would inform future missions. Skylab's missions weren't without drama. The first crew arrived to find the station damaged from its launch, with a broken solar panel and missing heat shield. In a display of ingenuity, the astronauts performed emergency repairs, demonstrating the importance of human problem-solving skills in space. These space stations became floating laboratories, enabling a wide range of scientific research. Astronauts on Skylab carried out solar observations, providing new insights into our nearest star. They also conducted Earth studies, photographing our planet from orbit and studying its weather patterns. Medical research was a key focus, as scientists sought to understand how the human body adapts to the space environment. The Salyut program continued to evolve, with later stations featuring improved living conditions and more advanced scientific equipment. Cosmonauts set new records for time spent in space, paving the way for even longer missions in the future. Both Skylab and the Salyut stations laid crucial groundwork for future space exploration. They proved that humans could live and work productively in space for extended periods, a critical step towards eventual missions to Mars and beyond. The knowledge gained from these programs directly influenced the design and operation of later space stations, including the Soviet Mir and the International Space Station. Apollo-Soyuz Test Project. Cooperation at last. While space stations push the boundaries of human endurance in orbit, a new mission emerged that would challenge political boundaries on Earth. What happens when Cold War rivals decide to shake hands in space? The Apollo-Soyuz test project was about to redefine international cooperation beyond our planet's atmosphere. In 1975, the United States and the Soviet Union embarked on a historic mission that would mark the end of the space race era. The Apollo-Soyuz test project, or ASTP, brought together former rivals in a spectacular display of international cooperation. This groundbreaking endeavor involved the docking of an American Apollo spacecraft with a Soviet Soyuz spacecraft, a feat that seemed impossible just a few years earlier. The mission crews represented the best of both nations. Astronauts Tom Stafford, Deke Slayton, and Vance Brand flew for the United States, while cosmonauts Alexei Leonov and Valery Kubasov represented the Soviet Union. These men, once competitors in the race to space, now work together towards a common goal. One of the biggest challenges facing the ASTP was overcoming the technical differences between American and Soviet spacecraft. Engineers from both countries had to work together to create a compatible docking system. The result was the Apollo docking mechanism, a testament to international collaboration and ingenuity. On July 17, 1975, the world watched as the two spacecraft successfully docked in orbit. The moment the hatches opened and the crews met face to face symbolized more than just a technical achievement. It was a powerful gesture of goodwill between two superpowers. The handshake between Stafford and Leonov, broadcast live around the world, became an iconic image of cooperation transcending political differences. Over the next 2 days, the combined crews conducted joint experiments, exchanged gifts, and shared meals together. They demonstrated that peaceful cooperation in space was not only possible, but beneficial for scientific progress. The astronauts and cosmonauts communicated in each other's languages, with the Americans speaking Russian and the Soviets speaking English, further emphasizing the spirit of collaboration. The ASTP wasn't just about symbolic gestures. The mission provided valuable scientific data and tested new technologies. The crews studied the effects of space on metal processing, investigated the growth of microorganisms in microgravity, and observed artificial solar eclipses. These experiments paved the way for future collaborative research in space. The success of the Apollo-Soyuz test project had far-reaching implications. It demonstrated that space could serve as a platform for unity, even during times of geopolitical tension on Earth. The mission laid the groundwork for future international partnerships in space exploration, including the Shuttle Mir program and the International Space Station, or ISS. The rise of the International Space Station, or ISS. As the space race cooled and international tensions eased, a new era of cooperation in space exploration began to take shape. The International Space Station, or ISS, emerged as a symbol of this new collaborative spirit, bringing together nations that were once fierce rivals in the quest to conquer the cosmos. Planning for the ISS started in the 1980s, with major space agencies from around the world joining forces. NASA, the Russian space agency Roscosmos, the European Space Agency, ESA, The Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA, and the Canadian Space Agency, CSA, all contributed their expertise and resources to this ambitious project. In 1998, the first piece of the ISS puzzle fell into place. The Russian-built Zarya module, which means sunrise in Russian, launched into orbit. This initial component provided power, storage, and propulsion for the fledgling station. Shortly after, NASA's Unity module joined Zarya in space, connecting with it to form the core of the ISS. From these humble beginnings, the ISS grew piece by piece over the following decades. Each new module expanded the station's capabilities, living space, and scientific potential. The ISS is like a giant Lego set in space, with components from different countries coming together to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Today, the ISS is the largest human-made object in orbit, spanning the length of a football field. It's a testament to human ingenuity and international cooperation, with astronauts and cosmonauts from various nations living and working together in harmony high above the Earth. Life aboard the ISS is a unique experience. Astronauts float in microgravity, conduct cutting-edge experiments, and witness breathtaking views of our planet. They study how the human body adapts to long periods in space, information crucial for future missions to Mars and beyond. The station is a floating laboratory where researchers investigate everything from the behavior of fluids in microgravity to the growth of plants in space. The ISS isn't just about science, though. It's also a testing ground for technologies that will be essential for deep space exploration. Systems for recycling water, generating oxygen, and maintaining a habitable environment in the harsh conditions of space are all put through their paces on the station. Perhaps the most important aspect of the ISS is its role in fostering international cooperation. In a world often divided by politics and cultural differences, the ISS stands as a shining example of what we can achieve when we work together. Astronauts from different countries live and work side by side, sharing meals, solving problems, and conducting research for the benefit of all humanity. The rise of SpaceX and the private space industry. As government space programs laid the foundation for long-term human presence in space, a new player was about to change the game entirely. What if the next giant leap for mankind wasn't taken by a nation, but by a bold entrepreneur with a dream of Mars? The rise of SpaceX and the private space industry marked a revolutionary shift in space exploration, making it more accessible and cost-effective than ever before. Founded by Elon Musk in 2002, SpaceX set out with ambitious goals to reduce the cost of spaceflight and pave the way for the colonization of Mars. In 2008, SpaceX achieved a historic milestone when its Falcon 1 rocket became the first privately developed vehicle to reach orbit. This success demonstrated that commercial companies could compete in a field long dominated by government agencies. It was a wake-up call to the aerospace industry, proving that innovation and cost-cutting measures could coexist with reliable spaceflight. The company's next big breakthrough came in 2012 with the Dragon spacecraft. This capsule made history as the first private vehicle to deliver cargo to the International Space Station, or ISS. The sight of a commercial spacecraft docking with the orbiting laboratory signaled a new era in space logistics and support. Perhaps SpaceX's most game-changing innovation was the development of reusable rocket technology. In 2015, the company successfully landed a Falcon 9 booster after launch, a feat many had thought impossible. This achievement dramatically reduced the cost of access to space, as rockets could now be used multiple times instead of being discarded after a single flight. The culmination of SpaceX's efforts in human spaceflight came in 2020 with the launch of the Crew Dragon spacecraft. Carrying NASA astronauts to the ISS, this mission marked the first time a commercial vehicle had transported humans to orbit. It restored America's ability to launch astronauts from its own soil, a capability lost since the retirement of the Space Shuttle in 2011. SpaceX's success has sparked a new space race, this time among private companies. Firms like Blue Origin, founded by Amazon's Jeff Bezos, and Virgin Galactic, founded by Richard Branson, are pushing the boundaries of space tourism. Rocket Lab has carved out a niche launching small satellites, while numerous startups are developing new propulsion technologies and spacecraft designs. This boom in the private space sector is expanding humanity's reach beyond Earth in ways previously unimaginable. Companies are launching vast constellations of satellites to provide global internet coverage, developing plans for lunar bases, and even setting their sights on Mars exploration. The dream of space tourism is becoming a reality, with several companies offering suborbital flights and planning orbital hotels. The Artemis program and the return to the moon. Decades after the last Apollo mission, humanity's gaze has once again turned to the moon. NASA's Artemis program aims to return humans to the lunar surface, but with a new vision that goes far beyond the brief visits of the past. This ambitious endeavor seeks to establish a sustainable human presence on our celestial neighbor, paving the way for even bolder explorations to Mars and beyond. Announced in 2019, the Artemis program set its sights on landing the first woman and the next man on the moon by the mid-2020s. This goal represents more than just a repeat of past achievements. It's a statement of intent, signaling a new era of lunar exploration that emphasizes long-term sustainability and international cooperation. Unlike the Apollo program, which was largely a solo effort by the United States, Artemis embraces collaboration on a global scale. NASA has partnered with space agencies from around the world, including the European Space Agency, ESA, Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA, and the Canadian Space Agency, CSA. This international team brings together diverse expertise and resources, reflecting a shared vision of space exploration that transcends national boundaries. Commercial entities also play a crucial role in the Artemis program. Companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin are developing technologies and systems that will support lunar missions. This partnership between government agencies and private industry represents a new model for space exploration, combining public sector goals with private sector innovation and efficiency. At the heart of the Artemis program are two key components: the Space Launch System, or SLS, and the Orion spacecraft. The SLS is designed to be the most powerful rocket ever built, capable of sending astronauts, cargo, and equipment to the Moon and beyond. The Orion spacecraft, with its advanced life support systems and radiation protection, will carry astronauts safely through the hazards of deep space. In 2022, Artemis 1 successfully launched as an uncrewed test flight, demonstrating the capabilities of both the SLS and Orion. This mission paved the way for Artemis 2, which will carry astronauts on a journey around the Moon, echoing the historic Apollo 8 mission. The culmination of these efforts will be Artemis 3, the mission that will return humans to the lunar surface, targeting the Moon's South Pole region. But Artemis isn't just about getting to the Moon. It's about staying there. The program includes plans for the Lunar Gateway, a small space station in lunar orbit that will serve as a staging point for both robotic and crewed exploration of the lunar surface. This outpost will provide a platform for scientific research, testing of new technologies, and preparation for future missions to Mars. As we conclude our journey through the space race and its profound legacy, we've witnessed how humanity's desire to reach beyond the confines of Earth propelled innovation and reshaped history. From the early rivalry between superpowers to the cooperative spirit of the International Space Station and the bold aspirations of the Artemis program, space exploration has continually pushed the boundaries of what we thought possible. If you enjoyed this exploration, subscribe for more deep dives into the pivotal moments of our past and future. Let us know in the comments which milestone in space history left the biggest impression on you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next documentary. Until then, look up, stay curious, and explore our other episodes for more inspiring stories of human achievement.